In this clip, we are going to see PoliticsGirl push back, as well as push back, also humiliates a immature MAGA nut job simply because of the fact that he's just not taking the war in Iran as serious as it should be. As usual, let's watch the clip in full, and then let's also see what it is that they're going to speak about in regards to the Iran war, and then we'll go from there. Let's get into it.
Tonight, the price of oil has skyrocketed to the highest level in nearly 4 years. It jumped to over $100 a barrel, and markets tumbled as a result of it. At the center of all of this is the Strait of Hormuz. Iran has effectively closed that waterway and has struck at least 6 vessels there and in the Persian Gulf in the last 48 hours. And just in, sources tell CNN that the Pentagon and the National Security Council significantly underestimated Iran's willingness to close the strait in response to military strikes. We're also told that the security team didn't account for the potential consequences of what officials are describing as a worst-case scenario. But now, the president is suggesting that higher oil costs are actually a good thing. He posted on Truth Social that because the U.S. is the largest producer of oil in the world, more expensive oil means America is making a lot more money. But he did add that right now, stopping Iran from having nuclear weapons is of far greater interest to him. So this new reporting, I think, is very eye-opening for a number of reasons, because the ability of Iran to continue to keep the Strait of Hormuz effectively closed to non-Iranian, non-allied ships of theirs, even though they are severely weakened, is probably the biggest factor that's going to control whether or not this war continues. Because if oil gets to a certain point, the Trump administration is going to have to deal with the practical and political consequences of that.
Look, it is Iran's only point of leverage right now. Let's be clear about that. There is no other point that they can twist anyone's arm. They can't talk their way out of it. The supreme leader, the new supreme leader, we're not even sure if he's healthy enough to stand. He hasn't been seen yet. So they're playing the only chip they have on the poker table. The president has a lot more chips to play as well. Obviously, there's talk about the Navy coming in, whether that happens this week or next week, to actually escort some ships through the strait. That would be a positive development. But all of Iran's oil is focused, 95% of it, on one island. And the president has not authorized the bombers to take care of that island, eliminate that island. That is the ultimate, pardon the phrase, trump card, which is sort of the doomsday scenario for Iran. That would single-handedly wipe out their entire economy. President Trump still has that card to play, and I hope he uses that chip against theirs.
You're using a lot of gambling metaphors, which is interesting because I feel like this entire thing is one big gamble where we didn't consider the consequences. Like you're talking about he's got one chip and we have a bunch of chips. I feel like this is the most obvious ace up your sleeve situation that you could possibly have. Like to not think that they were going to close the Strait of Hormuz seems foolish. It feels like that was exactly what they were going to do. 1/5 of the world's oil goes through there for the entire world. So they're not just holding that, they're holding the world's oil hostage. And then on top of that, it's like they don't have anywhere to store the rest of the oil that they're actually pumping out of the ground. So all the places that are pumping oil are like, what are we going to do with this if we can't move it out? So that's also causing a problem. And then we have all of our bases around the Middle East. So that would be another chip that they could play. They could blow up our own bases that we've spent billions of dollars on over the years.
That was a good zinger. You got me on the gambling stuff. That was a good one.
I'm not trying to get you, dude. We're at war for no reason. We're at war for no reason, and you're like,
if we're not talking about chips, we're talking about nuclear warheads and nuclear enriched uranium.
No,
is it better
there was no
that they
reason
have
and no intelligence that there was any nuclear warheads
no one thought this plan out. Is it better? Would it be better that Iran has enriched uranium that they can now deploy to their proxies in the Middle East or use it themselves?
But that's not what they said. That's not what's on the table.
I actually think that's a good question. It's a good question whether we're even going after the enriched uranium because, look, the objectives here and what they actually will accomplish, that is one of the big question marks. Are they actually going to be able to get to that uranium? Or are they actually going to be able to take it off the table? I'm not so sure. We've seen evidence of that.
Right. I don't think you have to have secret intelligence sources to know that they failed to plan for a lot of the contingencies that were easily predictable if we were going to attack Iran. The Strait of Hormuz, the attacking of our embassies, tens of thousands of Americans trapped and can't get out of the country as they're in danger. They didn't bother to tell them. No consultation with allies, no energy policy to offset the disruption, and they're scrambling. Oh, now we've got to release Russia sanctions to get more oil on the market, and now we've got to tap the strategic reserves, and they're obviously reacting. They're killing the mine boats after the mines are already in the water, okay? So they're constantly chasing the Iranian strategy, and it just shows what happens when you have a military-only approach that has nothing to do with the diplomatic, economic, and political consequences of launching a major war that's going to engulf the region in fire. And so when you look at any one of these issues, you have to say to yourself, man, this should have been planned a lot better, whether or not you think this is a good idea or a bad idea. And in the end, at every stage, the administration is going to face this issue of, okay, how much pain are we willing to take for the American economy? How many dead men and women are going to return to Dover Air Force Base? How many billions are we going to spend? And can we suffer more than the Iranians? And over time, the Iranians are betting that they're going to be able to suffer more than us. And they may be right about that because Trump changes his mind all the time. And that speaks to your questions about objectives. They're always changing because Trump's constantly changing his mind.
So
and that's crazy.
Two different administration officials, both involved in the energy strategy, talked about whether or not the boats would be escorted in the Strait of Hormuz or not. Just listen to what they had to say.
Can it happen now? Will it happen soon that the Navy can do that?
It'll happen relatively soon, but it can't happen now. We're simply not ready. All of our military assets right now are focused on destroying Iran's offensive capabilities and the manufacturing industry that supplies their offensive capabilities.
That was always in our planning, that there's the chance that U.S. Navy or perhaps an international coalition will be escorting oil tankers through. There are, in fact, tankers coming through now. Iranian tankers, I believe some Chinese flag tankers have come through. So we know that they have not mined the straits.
They're letting the Chinese tankers through because they're partners with China,
right? Yeah,
and getting money from the Chinese.
They're letting their
that's not a good
allies
example of a successful.
not ours. But I mean, if you listen to that, I mean, you're hearing, Scott, two different messages here. But the bottom line is that it's not happening right now. We are 12 days into this war, and for us and for the rest of the world outside of Iran, China, and India, the Strait of Hormuz is closed. So we are effectively unprepared for this moment.
Well, I mean, as you said, we're 12, 13 days into this. And I suspect that over the next few days, we will be working with international partners to open it up. I don't know whether it will happen within the next 24 hours, 48, or what have you, but it's obviously a priority. I agree with Joe. This is really the last thing Iran is capable of doing. And so we have to destroy their capabilities of doing that. It seems to me, given the fact that they have been intermittently attacking all their neighbors in the Gulf, the other Arab states, that they would have some interest in possibly over time ensuring that the strait remains open. So I think it's sort of fashionable to freak out and have a meltdown when you oppose something in the first place. But again, we're in the middle of the second week of this. We have pummeled their offensive capabilities. We have destroyed nearly all of their air defenses. I mean, I think we are currently meeting our objectives. I think the issue you raised
about
about
our objectives?
No nukes, no missiles and drones, no aggressive Navy, no exporting of terrorism.
Based on what?
Period.
Based on what intelligence? Based on what evidence?
You don't think Iran is the largest state sponsor of terror, that they pursue nuclear weapons, that they have missiles and drones, and they have an aggressive Navy?
What's the evidence that we've met those objectives?
Yeah.
And how do you know when it ends?
Well, we have a severe, in the daily Pentagon briefings, we get a mathematical calculation of the degradation of the number of missiles and drones they've been able to fire. Number two, we have an account. Yes, we have.
Well,
we have an accounting.
Building new missiles and drones every day.
They have talked about their capacity.
We have an accounting every day of how many ships we've sunk, and so
sure,
we are.
But I guess I wonder, the two perhaps most important.
They constantly harass ships.
The two most important elements of this are going to be the nukes and this idea that are they going to export terrorism. I don't think we've seen any evidence that either of those two things have actually been halted.
I think the nuclear, just to answer your question, to me, the nuclear piece is the most important piece. The president set a red line. I'm never going to permit them to have nuclear weapons. They went to the table with our negotiators, and their opening position was,
where are they?
We have the material to do 11.
Yeah, I guess
that's what we have to take away.
I get that we know that they said that they had it, but I'm asking, do we know that we've destroyed it? Do we
We've not
have it in our
yet.
possession?
No.
So that's going to be a key question.
And that's part of the problem. This whole mission has been a disaster. And I think it's an unmitigated.
For who? Iran?
It's an
I agree with
unmitigated
you. That's what
disaster.
you think.
It's an unmitigated disaster for the world, for the United States of America. Maybe it's funny to you, but
It's funny to me that you're hoping that we lose this war to Iran.
That's not what he
amazing.
said.
I never
Scott.
said that.
Who's it a disaster for?
It's a disaster for the
Humanity?
170 school children who were killed by our U.S. Tomahawk missile. It's a disaster. It's a disaster for the. It's a disaster for the 7 U.S. soldiers. The 7 U.S. soldiers who were killed
You're
in this
wish-casting
mission.
an American disaster is amazing.
No.
It's incredible.
No, Scott. This mission has been a disaster. The motives have continued to change from one day to the next.
They have not.
The announcement today from the White
one
House
day-
was almost identical to the announcement on March 2nd.
Can I just finish? I let everyone else speak. I haven't spoken. President Trump said he wanted unconditional surrender. He said he wanted regime change. We're not going to get unconditional surrender. We're not going to get regime change. We have another Ayatollah Khomeini now in charge. The same person, same person with a different person with the same name, essentially running the country right now.
Maybe.
And maybe or maybe not, but we don't know what's going on because our government hasn't been truthful in telling us what we need to know about what's happening. And this is part of the problem.
What have they not been truthful
Well,
about?
this is part of the problem with the administration because they've been dishonest about what their objectives were from the beginning. They've been dishonest about what they've accomplished from the beginning.
What's the evidence of dishonesty?
And they were dishonest about the Tomahawk missile.
What is the evidence of dishonesty?
The evidence of dishonesty
General
would
Kane-
be in August. They told us they had completely decimated Iran's nuclear program.
Is that?
Then we had to get at them because they were getting nukes. Then it wasn't about the nukes; it was about regime change. Then it wasn't about regime change; it was about terrorism. So they don't have their story straight. So that's what they haven't been honest about, Scott. And at $1 billion a day, $11,000 a second, the American people are allowed to ask what the problem is, and we're not going to laugh about it. Okay, that's not what we're going to do.
Joe, go ahead. You can.
Just the money argument is so rich. You know, the money, how much we spent, $11 billion so far. We gave Ukraine $188 billion to prosecute their war, and the reaction from the left is to even give more money, to fund more money, spend more money in Ukraine. So yeah, it cost $11 billion. I'd rather the United States spend $11 billion, maybe $20 billion, maybe $30.
$11 billion
if it results
6 days.
If it results in, and I'll put the caveat, if it results in either the regime changing,
which is not happening,
or the inability of them to possess nuclear.
Okay, but Joe, what if neither of those things happen? Because as of this moment, it does not appear.
As of this moment,
hold on a second.
They set a timetable, and you're changing the timetable.
As of this moment, there's no indication that the regime has been weakened or that they have.
You don't
changed.
think Iran's been weakened?
All of the reporting out there
society
from within the administration is that they recognize that the regime has not. They have not shifted away from the Islamic.
Of course
regime.
not. They're religious fanatics. They personally never changed, but to say they haven't been weakened, I think is not true.
Scott, I mean, listen, I'm talking about how much control do they have over their own country? And I'm not saying that people weren't killed. Hold on a second, Joe. I'm not saying that people weren't killed in the regime. I'm just saying, are they in less control? And the answer is no. They're not.
How do you know that? What's your evidence for that?
Every single first-hand account from Iran.
I mean, what's your evidence that their
Thousands and
control has
thousands
been
of people
weakened?
in Iran.
Because, the current supposed head of the country is basically just a cardboard cutout that they claim is alive somewhere. It's pretty obvious we weakened the regime.
Yeah, but what does that have to do with whether or not they have control over the country?
They wouldn't be using AI images of the
seriously,
supreme leader
because
if they thought they had solid control of the
using
country.
AI
No,
images,
seriously,
for God's sake.
it's a serious question. No talking points. I'm just asking. Seriously, where's the evidence that the Iranian regime has loosened its grip over the country in a way that is meaningful?
What do you mean by grip? Their capacity to do what? They have far less capacity to fire missiles and drones?
Because you're telling me that the regime has has I don't see any evidence of that. I'm asking.
I said they were weakened. And there's no doubt they took out the entire top level of the government.
That civilians in Iran are orchestrating attacks on regime forces in different roadblocks and areas like that. That shows a coordinated effort from Iranians or someone else, perhaps, on the ground in Iran. That shows that the regime has lost some grip on the country. But again, you don't have to put up a cardboard cutout and an AI image of the supreme leader if you're not trying desperately to keep up the illusion that the regime is still solidly in control.
The person who contradicts you most is President Trump, because he says he wants to make a deal like Venezuela and put in a Delcy, which means another regime leader who's just willing to make a deal. Now, Donald Trump's wrong about that because the new leader, they just killed his father, his mother, his wife, his son, and 20 other members of his family. So I don't think he's going to make a deal. But what President Trump said is, It's going to end very soon. We've already won. We're just going to wrap it up. I'm going to say stop, and the Iranians are going to stop, okay? And that's what we're facing here. It's not, what is in the realm of the possible. It's the President of the United States says, whenever he says we're done, we're going to stop, he expects the Iranians to stop. And guess what? They're not going to stop. The war is going to go on. They're not just going to say, President Trump killed our Ayatollah, but now let's just make a deal and go back to business as normal. So the war's going to drag on, and that's exactly the quagmire that everyone warned about at the very beginning.
We'll continue this when we get back on the other side of this break. Next for us.
Honestly, my frustration when it comes to these guys, Joe Borelli and Scott Jennings, is that they're just going to sweep up and believe any of the BS Donald Trump feeds them. They're just going to, because I don't understand how they don't understand the perspective of the rest of the panel. This war hasn't been no masterclass. It has been a disaster from the very beginning. Literally from the point of 7 soldiers have been lost. RIP to those soldiers. A refill plane has been lost as well. We're not even sure, unless some intelligence or unless something has come out that speaks of what happened to the, I think it was 6 members that was on board. The 100+ kids that were killed. Honestly, like, even that, I want to spend some time there. Even that, the way in which that we as human beings are speaking so flippantly, so openly about the fact that over 100 young girls have been killed from an American missile. Like, even that is something that I'm struggling and finding hard to comprehend, that people are just glossing over. They're just glossing over it. And you can see what the problem is. When you see anyone within MAGA speaking about this, and then you put that then alongside the White House and this administration's social media antics, this is a group of people who aren't serious about what it is that they're doing. They're not serious about it at all. That's the reason as to why they feel emboldened to turn war into a game. A war in which, like I stated earlier, they killed over 100+ young girls. Now, this is what it is that I always say. And it's just crazy to me to see the double standard of how it is that we act. Imagine if Iran done the exact same thing on American soil to an all-girls school and done that. Bring it closer to home for me here in the UK. Imagine if Iran done that to an all-girls grammar school here in the United Kingdom and killed over 100+ young girls. We would be raging. We would be raging, and we would be calling for all-out war. We would. And the problem for me is this, and this is why I continuously say, it's so clear as day that this administration had no plan. Because if they did have a plan, number one, they wouldn't have accidentally killed the individuals that it is that they wanted to succeed the Ayatollah Khamenei. They wouldn't have killed those individuals. They wouldn't have. What they would have done instead is they would have done things the right way. But because this mission has been a disaster from the very beginning, we've seen so many problems. And guess what? Guess what's going to happen now? Do you now think that the Iranian regime, the new Ayatollah Khamenei, his son, do you think now they're just going to do a kumbaya and just let it lie, let it go? No chance. They are going to be seeking revenge. And Ayatollah Khamenei said it himself. They are going to be seeking revenge. There was no plan here. And when you actually take a look at the actual facts of everything, number one, the bombings that took place last year didn't need to take place. This war didn't need to take place. Donald Trump's ego is the reason as to why we're here. And the fact that it is that he ripped up the deal that it is that Barack Obama made with Iran. The fact he done that simply because he doesn't like Barack Obama, that's the reason as to why we're here. That's the reason as to why those 100+ schoolgirls are dead. 7 American soldiers are dead. And who knows of all the other mad things that are taking place. Strait of Hormuz is closed. The world is being impacted via oil prices. This has been a disaster. And if you're MAGA, you just have to accept the facts and the reality. It's been a disaster. And Donald Trump lied to you. Let me know your guys' thoughts in the comment section. And do me a favor, hype this video up if you like clips like these. Appreciate you guys. I'll see you guys in the next one.